welcome. I'm gonna start in a child's pose. I've got this little pillow. I'm gonna use that underneath my upper body so that I'm a little bit closer to level. You don't have to do that. You can just do a regular child's pose. If child's pose is not your jam, you can pick a different way to start. And then just join me when we get to the other end of the opening pose. So we'll be here for a couple minutes just breathing, paying attention, that sort of jazz. You can put a blanket down to protect your shins if that sounds like a plan. You can do, sometimes I do a lot of different, like a lot of pillows, a lot of support, but a little bit of support, no support, as you like. Oh. I'm just gonna see how this goes. Oh, I like a little kind of, in the beginning, like just a little kind of side to side movement, just kind of releasing tension from places. Oh. One of the things I like about child's pose is that it's sort of like coming into like a little cave. You could put a lot of your sensory data kind of off to the side and just focus on your breath. There's a kind of rise and fall of the body with the breath, which I find really cool. So try it, see if you can tune into that. So I'm going to stay for about 3 more breaths as is. Rid of this pillow, and instead I'm going to stick my arm in here. Now I'm going to leave my knees a little on the wider side, take one arm underneath the opposite arm. So now I've got a little bit of a twist to my upper back. Now I'm going to be really gentle with my neck and head here, but with my spare arm I'm just kind of pressing a little bit away with the floor. You could even hold on to the edge of the mat if that seems appropriate. I'm kind of pressing the shoulder, in this case my right shoulder here, into the ground and sliding backwards just to get a little stretch under that shoulder blade. So you can play with the angles and see how things feel to you. Just be kind to places that might be a little on the tender side. Shoulders can be that way. And then with my exhale, I'm going to release this arm, take it out. Oh. little shimmy. So I'm going to reach that right arm straight out, take my left leg out with it, create a little spinal balance there, draw in through the sides of the waist a bit, reach. 2 more breaths like that. And then I'm going to bring those down, take this opposite arm, thread that underneath. Trying to find the spot where the shoulder gets to have a little fun, but I'm not doing anything crazy to anything else. Definitely don't want to feel a lot of pressure on my neck or head here. So breathing nice and deep. One more breath. And then I'm going to come out of there. Again, once I've gotten myself kind of steady, I'm going to take that arm straight out, take the opposite leg straight out, reach between those 2 points. Nice long stretch. Reach. Last breaths. One more. And then bring it on down. Okay, so then you can do some movements in the spine itself, little cat shapes, shapes that maybe are a little bit more reminiscent of farm animals. We're trying to get the upper back to change shapes a little bit and move around, and we're trying to do the same thing with the lower back. So the lower back normally wants to curve inward, and so on this little outward curve, you're kind of pressing a little bit more, feeling for the muscles around the lower back. The upper back usually wants to curve outward, so on this inhale shape, I'm trying to get some movement in my upper back. You can add some little side to side movement to that as well. Just see where that takes you. Now, I'm going to probably do 2 more of these and then head into downward dog. If you would like to avoid downward dog, you can do a plank in place of downward dog. Definitely give you a different sort of thing, but you can definitely do it. And then the other option would be to just come straight to a standing pose. A mountain pose, just standing straight up and down. Just straight on your feet. Spend as much time with your downward dog as you like. When you've gotten to a place where you feel like you've had enough of your downward dog, then you will come to a standing forward bend shape. You can keep your feet close together or wider apart. I'm going to sway over to one side. That's going to create a little bit more sensation in the back of that leg, and then sway over to the other side. And then in the center, I'm going to bend the knees until my chest rests on my thighs so I can do just a little rinse out with the neck. So letting my torso come up, straight legs over to one side, over to the other side. Both knees bent, a little release down the middle, mostly for my spine. Okay, one more time. Over to one side. Over to the other side. And right down the middle. All right, so then we'll come all the way up to standing. If you're not already there, give it a nice big stretch. so I'm going to meander up to the top of my mat. Now, you may decide that you have other, you can stand in the middle of your mat, you can stand wherever you want. This gives me a little bit more room for sending my foot backwards from some of the standing balance poses we're going to do. So standing at the top of your mat makes sense, do that. And then pausing for just a moment, just feel like turn your toes forward so you can feel yourself get the most even possible in the feet. And then I'm kind of rocking myself back and forth a little bit on my heels and toes, just to feel the weight distribution. So starting out with a sort of exaggerated rock back and forth, and then gradually changing it so it's just the tiniest little bit. Try to find the center point, front to back. So you're not leaning too heavy into the toes or too heavy into the heels. Notice the weight distribution on the feet. Can you feel the arches on the inside edge of the foot, the outside edge of the foot? Can you feel an arch between your big toe and your little toe? I'm going to take a nice big inhale. The arms are going to come up. So I reach mine straight up the center because I've got plants, but you can sweep them out to the side. Grab your right wrist. Give yourself a little stretch over to the left. Come back to the center. Grab your left wrist, give yourself a little stretch over to the right when it seems okay to do so. Come back to the middle, nice big stretch down the center. Exhale, fold forward. Inhale, come up halfway. Exhale, fold. Now I'm going to use blocks under my hands, but you could just as easily put your hands on the floor, or you could use like a little piece of furniture if you've got one nearby. We're going to step the left leg back. So my right leg is forward and my left leg is back. And I want my right knee to be over the ankle or slightly behind it, but not forward of the ankle here. So we'll need enough length that this leg has some room to reach back, and my knee isn't going to go forward. So we're going to straighten out the front leg and send the left heel toward the ground. Then bend the front knee and let ourselves shift a little bit more towards the toes there on that left foot. So straightening out the front leg, bringing the left heel toward the ground. It may not go all the way straight, that's all right. Bend the knee, come back to the lunge. And I'm aiming for the sensation kind of through the front of this hip here. And then one more time, this is usually for me more about the calf muscles on the back of that left leg. Bend the knee. All right, so we're gonna step ourselves back to down dog. Now, you can skip dogs always and go straight to plank or to the top of the mat, depending on where we are in the flow. So you'll lower down some way. You can go all the way to the floor, come down just halfway, come into a little cobra pose or an upward dog if that's more your jam. And then we'll come back to downward dog. We're going to take that left leg back up in the air. Pause right there. Try to get your hips nice and level. Sink a bit into that right heel. Give that left foot a couple of little spins in each direction. And then we're going to step it forward. If you can go straight through your hands, that's one way to do it. You can also go out to the side to get it up, and then we'll bring that right leg up to meet the left one. Come up halfway. Fold. And then come all the way to standing. Nice big long stretch. And then we'll find that mountain pose again. And again, we're aiming to find that same notion of evenness in the feet. Notice if there's any difference in the way it feels now to be in this mountain pose. Does your body feel any different having done a little flow? Reach the arms up. Give yourself a nice long stretch. Grab your left wrist. Give yourself a little stretch over to the right. Ooh. Grab the right wrist. Give it a little stretch over to the left. Ooh. Coming back to the middle. Nice big stretch. Exhale, fold forward. Come up halfway. Exhale, fold. And again, we're going to step back this time with the right foot and find that lunge shape that's long enough that you've got your knee in good position here, right over the ankle or just behind it. Press back through your right heel. As you straighten out your right leg or left leg, you're going to send that right heel toward the ground. And then bend. Come back towards the ball of the foot, sending the right hip a little bit into the stretch. So lifting, straightening out the left leg, sending the right heel down, and feeling out all this movement. It's really subtle in some cases is all you need. Bending the knee, coming back to that lunge sensation. One more time. Straightening out that front leg, sending the heel down. Bending the right knee. Stretching through the front of that left hip, and then we're going to step this back into downward dog. When you get there, pause for a moment, just take a big breath. Again, you can hold the plank instead. Coming forward into plank, lowering down through the vinyasa of your choice. You're going to take that right leg up when you get back to your downward dog. And again, I want to keep the hip as square as possible, send the left heel down, give that right foot a couple of circles in each direction. And then we're going to step that forward, bring the left foot up to meet it, come up halfway, fold, and then come all the way to standing. Give yourself a nice big stretch. Whew, and find yourself back to your mountain pose. Taking just a moment to feel again, has anything shifted? All right, we're going to put all the weight into the right leg. We're going to bring the left leg into a tree pose. Now, one of the possibilities exists that my hip will fall as I come into the tree. So we're going to try to keep the hip level. Now, your foot can go anywhere you like. It can go out the ankle, middle of your calf muscle. You can skip over the knee, put it in the middle of your thigh, or even kind of tuck it up toward the groin. That is dependent on your knees and your hips and other things. But see if you can find the sense of the tree with the hips remaining nice and level. And then, of course, there's the balance challenge of it as well. So keep your eyes steady and see if we can kind of keep that sense of this pose. Or come back to it as we lose it. Ooh. 2 more breaths. Now picking up this left leg, I'm going to step it back. And this time, rather than come to the high lunge like we did last time, we're going to bring the heel around so we can come to a warrior 1 shape. So that'll turn the hip a little to the diagonal rather than pointing it forward. The more inward you can turn your foot and still get your heel to the ground, the more your hip will come around. This in general depends on your ankle flexibility. So if your ankle flexibility is such that it's better for it to point out, let it point out. If it feels like you're on a tightrope, wiggle your front foot a little bit wider out so you've got more space left to right between your 2 feet. And you'll have a little wider base. We're going to press back through this hip, reach the arms up, pull them back behind us so that elbows come closer together. It's almost like we're trying to touch the shoulder blades to one another, and then push the arms forward. So arms up, elbows back, hands forward, up, back, forward. I'm going to do that one more time. All right. So we're going to turn the torso towards this diagonal, whatever the diagonal is. Wrap your arms behind your back. Now you can lace your fingers together. I'm going to use a yoga strap so that I can get a little distance between my hands. And this helps my tight shoulders open up a little bit more. So we're going to fold forward. You might decide to let your head drop over. You might keep your head a little above your hip. Depends on how your body feels about being upside down. And then see if your arms will come up off your back. And then breathe. And if you don't have a strap or something like that, you can just keep your fingers together, or keep one hand inside the other and just lift the elbows. So that'll get us closer to this elbows and shoulder blades coming together over the back and shoulder stretch. One more breath here. All right, so we're going to take the whole thing back to down dog, or you can go directly to plank. You want to skip that dog. Before I get to there though, I'm going to just rinse my shoulders out for a second. And then notice if there's a difference in either your plank or your dog in the way your upper back or shoulder are experienced. Okay. Lowering through the vinyasa, or just keeping yourself steady and skipping a vinyasa. You can do that too. We're going to come back to either down dog or go straight to the top of the mat. So that left leg's going to come up. We're going to bring the knees straight down the center, curl up around it, stretch it back, bring it to the outside left elbow, bring it back, and this time we're going to step it forward in whatever way works. Step up to it with your right foot. Come up halfway, fold if that's okay, and then come all the way to standing. Give yourself a nice big stretch. Find yourself back in your mountain pose. See if there's a difference in the way your mountain pose feels this round versus the last time. And then we're going to shift the weight into this left leg. And again, we're going to do a tree. We're going to try to keep the hips level. So we keep one from dropping down. And find that tree pose on the other side. Two more breaths if we can do it. And then we're going to step back and into that warrior one shape. Again, for me, the hips are a little bit at a diagonal. And then for this early part, I just turn my ribs forward, trying not to drag my hips or collapse through the back knee, letting that stay nice and strong. Arms come up, elbows back, push forward. So again, I'm doing this little movement in my shoulders and upper back. One more time. Oh. All right, so I'm going to turn a little to that diagonal. Again, I'm going to drop my arms, or draw my arms back around behind my back. And then as I fold forward, I'll use the space that the prop gives me to create the little shoulder opener. Oh. And again, you don't have this, then just, you can raise your arms without it. You can keep one palm on top of the other, draw the elbows back. There's lots of ways to get to some shoulder work here, with or without a prop. So nice and long, deep breaths, as best you can, given the circumstances. All right. When your exhale finds you, we'll take ourselves out of that shape. I'm going to jiggle my shoulders a little bit. And then step back to down dog when you're ready. Again, you can go directly to plank and skip the dog section if you want to add that in. And just hold a plank. And then when you're ready, you can either hold that dog or plank and stay put, or come through the vinyasa as you like. So again, we're going to take that right leg in the air. I'm going to bring it straight down the middle, curl up around it, take it towards the upper right arm, stretch it back, step it forward, bring your left foot up to meet your right, come up halfway, fold, and then come all the way to standing. find your mountain pose once again. All right, so each time we come back home to here, notice left to right, front to back, the overall sense of your body. Is there a difference? All right, so we're gonna come to another standing balance pose. This time it's gonna start with the standing splits. So we're gonna stretch up nice and tall. Exhale, fold forward. So we're gonna keep the weight on the right leg. Blocks can be helpful here if you don't have them. Again, you can use anything that'll just give you some support. We're gonna take this left leg and stretch it up toward the ceiling as far as it will go. Now you can let go of everything and try to just hold on to your right leg, but if you fall, you should definitely catch. But then the other possibility is that you just keep your hands on the floor and work this kind of splits action with the legs. We're basically just bending over with one leg in the air at this point. All right, so we're gonna morph this into a half moon balance. We're gonna pick the torso up and tilt up onto the top of that, or onto that right hip. Ooh, and then see if we can stretch out without falling over. Today may not be that day. Stretch it out nice and big. We're gonna take this into a warrior two. Maybe you have to wiggle your warrior two into place. And then when you're ready, you come on back to reverse and over into a side angle. We're gonna do that a few times. Just kind of pulsing back and forth. A little reverse, a little side angle. Okay, straighten out your front leg, and you can adjust the feet. I always bring my feet just a little bit closer together for triangle than warrior two, just a tiny notch. And then feel this pose coming from the center of your body, moving outward. So you may have to get up a little higher to sort of find all these little points. So there has always been this notion existing out there that somehow you're supposed to flatten yourself in triangle, and I don't buy that notion. I think it's fine for the hip to stick out. But there is some differences in the way it makes your spine work, right? So if I tuck my hip under, then my spine sort of makes this little rainbow shape. It doesn't get as much length on the bottom. Whereas if I let my hip stick back, I can get a little more length through the whole length of the spine. So really just depends on how you feel about the pose and how you want to do it. Just be kind to your joints as time goes on. You can certainly float the arm up to make that top of the triangle. For now, I'm sticking with this lower position. All right, last breath here. Okay, so we're gonna step this back into our downward dog. And again, I like to take that moment just to notice the difference between the left and the right, kind of see how things go, and then add the vinyasa. Again, you can add that in or skip it or do some extra. It's up to you. So we're going to take that left leg up with us, give it a little over the back, a little movement, and then bring it forward and step the right foot up to meet it. Come up halfway, fold, and then we're going to come all the way up to standing. Give it a big stretch when you get there. And then find your mountain pose again. And again, just check. Is there a difference in the way my right side feels compared to the left? Nice big inhale. Exhale, we're going to fold ourselves into that standing splits pose. So again, with or without the extra help, just taking one leg up and bending over. And again, you can sort of play with the balance challenge of it. Or keep your hands in a sturdy place and not worry about that part as much. And then we're going to morph this into a half moon by kind of lifting that right hip up on top of the left and then extending out, if we can, extending out to the side nice and big. Ooh, I'm wobbly today. One more. And then we're going to try to land that in a warrior two. Maybe it went really well. Maybe not so well. We'll do our best. When you're there, come on back to reverse warrior and over to side angle. One more of those. And then we'll take this into our triangle pose. Again, making adjustments or adding props as you like. And mostly just not doing the poses by some sort of rote, sort of I've been taught this is the way to do it, but instead feeling all of the edges of it and making choices based on what you find. One more breath. And then we're going to step this back into downward dog. And again, you can add that vinyasa right away. Hold a plank for a bit, or go ahead and add it in. A little more methodically. When you get back to downward dog, and I'm not rushing you, just hook that leg up and over. And then when you're ready, step forward. Bring your left foot up to meet your right one. Come up halfway. Exhale, fold. And come all the way to standing. Give yourself a nice big stretch. And then give everything a little bit of a jiggle. And then find your mountain pose. One more time. So, is this mountain pose different than the very first one? So you have two choices. You can take yourself into a chair, or you can take yourself into a deep squat. So a deep squat just means your butt goes lower than your knees. A chair pose means you keep the hips higher than the knees. There's probably more differences than that, but that's the main thing. So I'm gonna sit back into a chair. So I try to keep my knees balanced in a way that doesn't feel too, like I'm putting too much pressure there. I let there be a curve in my low back here. I'm not trying to tuck my tailbone under. And then you can extend the arms if you want to add the leverage. Put the hands to your heart if you want to take it out. And then with a squat, you just take your hips as low as they'll go. For some people, that's an easy pose to do. A chair pose is actually more challenging, and vice versa. 2 more breaths here. Then we're going to exhale and fold forward. We're going to pick up this left leg and step back. Now, we're going to turn this into a wide angle forward bend. So bring in the toes around. You can point your toes directly like forward now that you're standing in this position, or they can be slightly turned out. Really what matters is that there doesn't feel like there's a binding in your knee joint or in your hip joint. So if it feels like something's torquing in your knee, adjust the feet slightly out and see if that takes care of it. Some of us actually have twists in our leg bones. that make turning the toes in kind of ridiculous. Now, you can put some blocks in here so that you can level out your torso, or some folks will be able, because of the length of their arms, to just put their hands on the floor or their fists. I like a little bit of height with my short little arms. So about level with the torso. I'm gonna hug in my navel just a little bit, just to create some structure and support. I'm gonna take my left hand off and twist towards my left. Now I'm trying to mostly twist my upper back, so I'm going just to the point where it feels like my right hip wants to help and not any further. If you want more rotation on that twist, you could let your right hip help. Coming back to the center, right arm up, twisting. And again, I'm trying to isolate this twist mostly in my upper back because that's where I need the tension release. Oh. That twist provide. One more on each side. Oh. Now, if you like, you can throw in a vinyasa here. I'm going to do a forward bend, and then we'll step back up to the top. So mostly I'm just going to bend forward. This will give you a chance to step back to down dog, do your vinyasa. Oh. And then what's going to happen for all of us is we're going to wind up back up at the top of the mat, either in the chair pose or coming back home to the squat, if that was more your steam, your speed, your jam. All right. So then folding forward, extending the legs, we're going to take this right foot and step it back. And again, we're going to come to this wide angle forward bend, this time letting it be a forward bend. So letting yourself either just hang, or you can reach around and grab the ankles or the big toes and take the elbows out to the side. Or you can lace your fingers together and come back to that over the back shape that we did earlier with the humble warrior. You can bend your knees, but it's probably better to lift your torso if it's really intense on the backs of your legs. For me, the straighter the leg, the more this sensation dissipates over the whole leg rather than landing right at the sit bone, which happens if I bend the knees. So you might be different though, experiment. All right, so you can throw in a vinyasa here. I'm gonna just come back to dog and pause right there, and then come to plank and lower all the way down. And that's where we're all gonna meet up. So if you wanna throw in an extra vinyasa, go for it. So we're gonna do these little baby cobras. So I've got my hands way up high, closer to like my ear than my shoulder. So the fingertips are above the line of my shoulder. I'm gonna inhale, lift into cobra, and I just am using the back muscles, the legs, and the glutes. The arms have one job, and that's to broaden, right? So like a cobra kind of spreads its hood out wide. That's the picture we get for this pose. So slide the hands back about an inch. Lift, broaden the shoulders. Okay, a little bit more. Slide the hands back, broaden the shoulders. And one more time, broaden the shoulders. Beautiful. So we'll come back to child's pose for a moment. If child's pose again is not your jam, you can come to a seated position directly, and we'll all meet up there in a bit. So I like to come home to a pose I did at the beginning, just to sort of touch it, see if it's any different than it was at the top of the practice. And then we're going to meet up in a seated position. So just start with something simple, cross-legged of some sort. There's no such thing as a simple seated position in your world. I find it's best to elevate the hips. So sit up on a blanket or two, or even a block if that's all you've got. Just sit your hips up a little higher, and generally it's a little bit kinder. Now you'll be able to adapt in a second, but we're just gonna pause for a moment. And then I've got my left leg in front, right? That's the one that's on top. So that's the direction I'm gonna twist in. So I'm gonna leave my leg down. You may decide you wanna pick it up and even wrap it over the top of the right leg. The thing that for me is really important again is that I'm paying attention to where in my spine is the twist coming. And if I do the wonkier shapes with my legs, it makes my hips do more of the work. And I really want to evenly distribute it through my spine. That's where I'm really interested in getting the twist, is through my back. So especially my upper back. So what I'm doing is I'm holding onto my left knee with my right hand, and that may not be available to everyone. Shin, thigh, you might can lasso your shin bone or something, or you can just hold onto your right leg, just reach across in some manner. And then my left arm is just creating some structure. Now, I've twisted this lower part of my back as much as it's gonna go without lifting my hip and bringing it with it. But my upper back still has a little bit of room. So I'm gonna take my right shoulder blade and try to pull it out and forward, and my left shoulder blade and try to pull it in and down towards my right hip. And really it's the shoulder blade action that for me, makes a twist really good, really good, and feels really nice when I'm done. I've turned my head towards my right, just because that's giving me a little bit more length as I pull this shoulder blade down. It gives me a little bit of a stretch on the side of my neck, which right now is a little bit important to me. So 2 more breaths here. And then I'm gonna let go of the twist. Now I'm gonna still kind of be turning in this direction, because I'm gonna take my right leg and straighten it out. And then I just sent my right hip forward so it sort of matches the sort of sense of how much I was turning in this left direction. Now you can bring your left foot all the way around. I'm gonna actually leave mine out here a little bit so I've got a little wider base. So you can do it as you like. And then I'm gonna fold over this right leg sideways. Now I've had some neck, basically what felt like whiplash for several days. Now it's a little better, but I'm still gonna provide my head with some support because this is a lot of stretch on the side of my neck. So you can take the arm up over your ear, that feels pretty good. You can take the arm and wrap it behind you, and some people can even get the arm so far around that they can slide the fingers into the hip crease right here. So you're welcome to do something along that line. I like mine just behind my back so there's a little bit more traction at the shoulder. And again, I'm trying to hit my neck right in the right place for me. The other possibility would be that you can just leave your arm out of this altogether. So choosing an arm position, a head position, and as much length as your spine says is okay to get you. We'll take this little side bend and hold steady for a few breaths. Take a nice big breath. Ooh, I'm coming up out of there, holding my head the whole way just so that I could get myself upright. And if you have sensitive neck muscles, that's kind of a nice way to do it anyway, even if it's not just a situation that you're currently dealing with. But if you have chronically tight neck muscles, holding your head as you come out can be nice. So I'm just giving my shoulders this little wiggle wiggle, kind of releasing. And then I'm gonna come back to a cross-legged position, but I'm gonna put my right leg in front. Now, I usually sit with my left leg in front, so this is a little bit awkward, but not terribly. If it's super duper awkward, you can go back to whatever your more comfortable cross-legged position is, Or we're gonna do the twist in a second, so if you modified it that way, you can do it again. Okay, so just coming back to kind of neutral, I am noticing there's some differences in my shoulders and the way my upper back feels. So let's see if it changes when I get done with this side. So again, I'm gonna twist around. I'm holding on here just so that I can use that as leverage to kind of pull that shoulder blade out. And again, my other shoulder blade, my right one this time, I'm trying to pull in and down diagonally towards my left hip. And again, I'm just twisting enough that I could get that kind of interest in my shoulders. You may want to do more work and add your hip into it as well. For me, I'm trying to isolate that a little bit more in my back, a little less around my hip. Because that's where the tension lies, y'all. Oh. Last breath here. And then I'm going to come around and I'm going to let this kind of settle a bit as I get my legs into place. Sending my left hip a little bit forward so I'm more kind of turned into this direction. And then as I feel ready, now my spine usually needs like a second. And then I might, extend the arm over, or again, I'm going to go back to my arm behind my back so that there's a little bit more space right there. Or you can, of course, put your arm in any position that makes sense to you. Support your head if you like, or don't if you've got no reason to do so. Oh. And then once you get here, take nice deep breaths. Feel space is opening up. Be kind to your low back. There's some tender places in the low back, kind of between the hip and the ribs, close to the spine itself, but not necessarily in the spinal vertebrae, just really next door. Although the way that muscle winds its way around the spine and the hip and the ribs can feel quite ligamental at times. It's a really interesting muscle back there that can be so tender if we overdo it. Got 2 more breaths here for myself. Okay, so I'm going to unwind my arm, use that to kind of help me come all the way up. Again, once I come out of here, I'm going to mostly jiggle a bit. Try to get a little kind of release there in the shoulders. Oh, it feels pretty good, y'all. So I'm trying to notice, like, does it feel like my shoulders are a little more even? And it's not exactly even, but it's definitely closer. I always have one shoulder blade with a little bit more scar tissue in it. So it's never 100% even, but not too bad. All right, so you could do the butterfly version of this where you fold with the feet together. I'm going to do this wide angle version because my pelvis lets me. And then we'll just bring the pelvis forward however far it goes and pause there. Take a nice deep breath, yogis. Two more breaths. All right, inhale yourself up. We're gonna bring the legs together or straighten them out as the case may be. So we've gotten to this point where it's time for some final relaxation. Now, I'm gonna do some little like happy baby things on my back. I'm gonna use a pillow ultimately under my legs to provide a little release for my low back, and I'm gonna put a little blanket underneath my head to act like a little pillow. If you are in a space where you are chilly, a little chilly, we're at that time of year, then you could certainly cover up with a blanket instead. So once I get myself down here, then I'll add all these extra bits to it. Oh. Oh. So, oh. It's kind of little, I'm not going to do a full-on happy baby, but some people call this happy puppy pose. I don't know. I guess because, you know, dogs kind of flop over onto their back to get you to scratch their belly. I assume that's where that comes from. But just kind of a light little back massage feels nice. You could do little spinal twist or any other shapes that you like first. And then kind of find your way into a relaxation pose. Snuggle the shoulder blades under you a little bit. See if you can get the kind of upper body to just relax into the floor. You might have to play with the position of your hips. I've got a pillow under my legs. If your low back tends to arch a little bit, that is really helpful to release a little bit of the pressure from the hip flexors. It's not the same for everybody, but it's, you know, you should try it. See if you like it. And then decide for yourself. And rolled up blanket or throw pillows works really great as well. If your Shavasana has not been interrupted by pets, take a nice big breath. Let go with a little or maybe it has been interrupted by pets. In any case, just notice your fingers and toes. Give them a little wiggle. We're not going anywhere yet. We're just wiggling those fingers and toes. You can spread the fingers out, stretch the toes apart, and then curl them in. Stretch them out and curl them in. Oh, stretch them out. Oh, give them a little wiggle. And then do some movement with your wrist and ankles. I like little circles, but you could do like little flamenco kind of movements if you like. And then stretch your whole body. You might do a little banana to each side. Oh. 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 You can bring your knees in for that little huggy, happy baby kind of pose. Give yourself a little back massage by just kind of rocking a little circle around the low back. And then when you're ready, come to a seated position. I like to roll onto my side first. Some people like to rock themselves up, so that would also work. Oh. All right, thanks for joining me for some Vinyasa yoga practice this morning. For me, it's kind of a cloudy Friday morning, but hopefully it's sunny where you are. Nice big breath. Big sigh. Namaste. Welcome to the rest of your day, yogis.